If you're hearing a Christmas carol in the background, don't worry, you've neither gone mad nor I have made an editing mistake. So why the Christmas music with such beautiful sunny weather? Because it's this Christmas carol that will introduce us to the next character in the story.
Hither, page, and stand by me, if thou know'st it telling, yonder peasant, who is he?
His name was Wenceslas, king of Bohemia in the 10th century, but he is better known in folklore as good old King Wenceslas. He had a notable pedigree, linking directly back to the founder of Prague, Princess Libuše. While she and her husband, Przemysl the Blauman, had 3 sons, only one branch of that family tree survived to inherit the land. Wenceslas was the direct heir to that enduring branch. His add another 6 grandmother had founded the city. It was now his turn to bring it to the stars she had prophesied. So Wenceslas became Duke of Bohemia very young, at the age of 13. He was thrust into power at such a young age because his father, Duke Ratislaus, died unexpectedly in battle against the Magyars. While the succession was ensured, Wenceslas was too young to rule alone. A regent had to be chosen, and the nobles chose Wenceslas' grandmother, Ludmila. Why her and not his mother, Drahomíra? The reason was simple enough: religion. Wenceslas' grandparents, Bohemia and Ludmila, had been the first Bohemian rulers to adopt Christianity, having been baptized by the missionaries Cyril and Methodius. On the other hand, Drahomíra had been forcefully converted to Christianity when she was forced into an arranged marriage with Wenceslas' father, and so it was thought that if she were to inherit the regency, things would go back to paganism in Bohemia. To say there was no love lost between mother and daughter-in-law would be an understatement. Not only did religion bitterly divide them, but Drahomíra was jealous of the bond between Wenceslas and Ludmila. From Drahomíra's perspective, her mother-in-law hadn't just stolen the regency, the power she felt was rightfully hers, but she had also completely monopolized her son's affection and loyalty. Being sidelined in both the government and her own family was an insult Drahomíra would not forgive. And so she plotted and finally managed to have Ludmila killed. And just like that, Drahomíra regency brought things back to paganism for Bohemia. Unsurprisingly, the murder of his beloved grandmother completely destroyed whatever relationship Wenceslas had left with his mother. He bided his time, but as soon as he came of age, he backed an uprising that sent Drahomíra straight into exile, and he was finally free to take the role of Duke of Bohemia for himself. As much as posterity likes to remember him as good old King Wenceslas, in reality, once he was Duke, he wasn't universally loved by his own people. The biggest point of contention was his foreign policy. To spare Bohemia from a devastating invasion, Wenceslas agreed to pay an annual tribute to the powerful German king Henry the Fowler. The Duke saw this as the necessary pragmatic price for peace. However, the proud Bohemian nobles saw it as a humiliating surrender. Furious at this supposed cowardice, these lords began looking for a replacement, setting their sights on Wenceslas' ambitious younger brother, Boleslav. Boleslav invited his brother Wenceslas to his domain in Stare Boleslav, and on Sunday the 28th of September 1935, as Wenceslas was going to mass, Boleslav and his assassins sprang their coup. They attacked unsuspecting Wenceslas and his servants just outside the church, and they clubbed and knifed him to death. This successful coup gave Boleslav what he had wanted, namely the Duchy of Bohemia. That he also got the moniker the Cruel in just juxtaposition with his brother's moniker the Good is something that he probably hadn't foreseen, but I don't think he was particularly devastated by it. Ever the shrewd politician, Boleslav wasted no time capitalizing on his brother's sudden post-mortem fame. He championed Wenceslas' canonization and transferred his remains back to Prague. There he entombed the new saint in the very church Wenceslas himself had founded, the Rotunda of Saint Vitus, a modest building that would eventually evolve into the magnificent cathedral that dominates the Prague skyline today. A question does remain though, was Wenceslas a duke or a king? Well, technically both of them, because during his life it is true that Wenceslas was never more than a duke, but posthumously Holy Roman Emperor Otto I gave him the title of king. But the story of King Wenceslas doesn't quite end with his death. Today he still watches over the city from his famous equestrian statue. Not this one. The actual monument at the top of Wenceslas Square. According to legend, if the Czech people ever face their darkest hour, the statue will come to life. His horse will strike the cobblestones, uncovering a legendary hidden sword, and the good king will ride out to save Bohemia once and for all. Now, you might think that putting an equestrian statue of Wenceslas in the main square of Prague was just a standard, traditional choice. After all, victorious leaders have been casting bronze on horseback since the days of ancient Rome. But in this case, the horse and the sword are just as important as the rider, because when Wenceslas finally rides out to defend his people, he won't be using just any mount with just any weapon. He will ride Semik, brandishing the sword of Bruncvík against the enemies of the land. While I was trying to figure out how to pronounce the name of the sword, I suddenly realized that Bruncvík is not the name of the weapon, but of the first owner of the sword itself. And a story, let me tell you, it's a doozy. According to the legend, Bruncvík was the governor of the city of Prague. One day he happily married his sweetheart, but realized he really wasn't happy just in the city of Prague. He wanted to see the world, and so he asked permission from his wife to gather 50 able men to go and see what the rest of the world had to offer. As you might imagine, she wasn't particularly happy with the request, but she was a very good wife, and she in the end gave her a friend. Bruncvík promised to be back in 7 years, but also told his wife that if he wasn't, she was free to remarry again. Bruncvík and his merry band of adventurers set off on their grand quest, riding out from Prague to conquer the unknown. And what happened next was basically akin to the adventures of Ulysses in the Odyssey, although all of that happened in Central Europe. Well, mostly. First, our landlocked heroes headed for the coast. They got themselves a ship, navigated presumably south, and immediately demonstrating the seafaring skills that you would expect from a landlocked Central European kingdom, meaning that, in record time, the vessel was hopelessly pulled into a magnetic island. Stranded with no way out, the entire crew promptly starved to death. Only Bruncvík survived. To escape the island, he devised the questionable plan. He stitched himself inside the rotting carcass of a dead horse, and then, right on cue, a gigantic bird swooped down, grabbed the carcass, and flew off towards his mountain nest. Having narrowly avoided becoming lunch for the bird's chicks, Bruncvík slipped away and wandered into a deep forest. There, he stumbled upon an epic battle between a perfectly normal lion and a 9-headed dragon. Evidently feeling the need to play the hero, Bruncvík stepped in, killed the dragon, and gained the lion as his fiercely loyal sidekick. Finally, he reached civilization, the kingdom of Olybrius. But unfortunately for Bruncvík, his luck didn't improve. He made his way to the castle, where he met a formidable queen who took an immediate liking to him and unilaterally decided they were getting married.
I think I like this story better than the Odyssey.
Of course, Bruncvík protested that he had already a wife back at home, but she didn't want to listen to reason and imprisoned him in the castle. Months passed, and as one day Bruncvík was roaming the castle trying to find an escape route, he found a sword that was apparently command act activated.
Blade, heads off!
That simple command was all it took to activate the magic, prompting the sword to spring to life
and decapitate whoever was currently in its line of sight.
Naturally, the sword's very first victim was the queen who had imprisoned him. Finally free, Bruncvík the Lion made a mad dash back to Prague. The 7 years he had promised his wife were up, and he had told her she was free to marry again if it didn't come back.
As luck would have it, Bruncvík actually came back into the city on the day of his wife's new marriage.
Disguised as a beggar, he sneaked into the banquet hall and slipped his all-wedding ring into her wine goblet. When she drank and spotted the ring, she immediately called off the wedding, because, surprisingly, despite the 7-year ghosting, she actually still loved him.
To say that the new groom was not pleased is probably the understatement of the century. He gathered 50 able men and went to try and relieve Bruncvík of his head. And of course, Bruncvík still had his magic sword with him, and so with just the words "blade, heads off," he got rid of the competition, went back with his wife, promised her that he was never going to go away again, and lived the rest of his years happily ever after.
With the lion, of course.
And it's exactly this sword that awaits Saint Wenceslas when he comes back to lead the ghost army when Prague is in danger. And honestly, with a blade that indiscriminately chops heads off at a single command, I'm pretty sure that Bohemia will be fine.
So we've got the rider and the sword. We're missing the steed. Once again, not this one.
This is the legend of Horymir and Semik.
Horymir was a noble who loved his land and his people. One day, silver mines were found on his land.
Knowing that if all the people transferred from agriculture to mining, there would be nothing left to eat, Horymir tried to warn the population.
No one listened, and even worse, they burned his house and imprisoned him at the Vyšehrad.
On the day of his execution, Horymir asked one last thing, to be able to actually go out for a moment with his beloved horse Semik.
Which granted, he used this chance to escape by jumping over the parapet and galloping away.
Unfortunately, such an action costed Semik his life, but before dying he was able to speak with Horymir.
Bury me in your domain, so that I can stay close to you forever.
Depending on the legend, Horymir did make Semik's wish come true and buried him in his domain. Oh, according to another version, Semik is buried here in Vyšehrad, awaiting the time where another worthy rider will meet him again.
And so there you have it, Bohemia's ultimate strike team. The saint, the sword, and the horse. I think Czechia is set.